Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Just gonna wait 1 minute for more people to join in. I can see the numbers are going up, but I'm gonna start promptly so I can present all the ideas. Thanks for joining me on this very sunny day. I know that probably participants from different areas, but it's a really nice, sunny, beautiful day in London today. So I will be talking about different games that you can apply in your language lessons. And before I start, as I can see lots of participants are joining right now, I'm just gonna tell you a few words about myself before I'm gonna present the first idea. So my name is Witold Woźniak. I'm a lead practitioner in an academy trust, which consists of 2 secondary schools and 3 primary schools. And that also allows me to work across the board, teaching at Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, and Key Stage 4. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my background. Okay, just let me see if the slide's going to change. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I'm an MFL teacher specialized in French and Italian. French is the main language I'm teaching, Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4. I mentor ECTs, which used to be known as NQTs. I mark GCSE exams for AQA and Pearson. Last summer, I was marking speaking exams for AQA and writing exams for Pearson's. I'm part of the local primary languages network, and also we organize the language conference every year, and I run DOV Jack Petty and Erasmus Plus projects in my school. I'm not only about languages. I love whiskey, I love Krispy Kremes, and I'm a big fan of Starbucks. So, and I have my fitness page, VitaVos Fitness. So if anyone wants to get in touch, or if you have any questions, that can be one of the ways how you can keep in touch after this presentation. So, Games Galore, that's the title of my session. There are 2 main objectives. So I'm going to present about 50 Key Stage 2 to Key Stage 4 linguistic games to boost students' confidence, enjoyment, participation, understanding of vocabulary. And I'm going to offer lots of variations to every game that you can easily adapt and integrate in your lessons, and hopefully that's not gonna include lots of planning. So some of them will be very traditional. Some of them you may not have heard about, but I'm gonna share some traditional stuff with new variations and also some new games that I came across and I tried in my practice. So I just have a few questions before we start. If you could just have a think, what do you remember from your primary or secondary education when it comes to games in language lessons? And what teachers do you recall most? And what methods worked for you most? And can you remember any fun activities? So I would say games, like good stories, work for everyone. And whether you are 4 or 40, they are liked by many as long as they aren't too invasive, too frequent, or predictable. So routines are good, but varied delivery makes it very fresh. That's why it's really good to have a game from time to time. So let's have a deep dive. And if you answered yes to some of those questions, this session is to remind you how you can liven up your lessons, stimulate your students' thinking, and break some repetitive routines, even if it's only for a couple of minutes, and hopefully make them remember some of the experiences of learning language with you. So before I present the first idea, I would just like you to have a look at this graph. That's what really inspired me to run this session today. Because when you look at how students learn, you're going to notice that actually 90% or it is what we actually do. And that's why playing games is so powerful, because doing the right presentation, stimulating the real experience of doing the real thing, learning by doing is the most powerful tool to ensure that students actually are engaged and they are learning something. So as we know it, short, fun, interventions matter. Like showing this picture, for instance, to your students can teach them which poison or poisson is best for them. So sometimes some simple visuals or simple triggers during the game can really teach them how to differentiate or see differences between different words. So at the very end, if I start the first idea, if you're going to try some strategies from my session today, remember, you aren't doing it wrong. Just give it a go. If no one knows what you are doing the right thing. So no pressure. Okay, so the first idea I would like to introduce is the first game is called Find Mickey. All it is, you invite one student to leave a class, and this student, when he or she comes back to the class, will have to ask a question. That could be any question. It could be, for instance, what's your name? And everyone is giving the real answer, so is giving their real name, but one person is asked to say, my name is Mickey, and this person needs to be found. You give only 1 minute, and let's say 7 chances for this person to find Mickey. And that could be not only used for presentations, could be also used for, okay, what's the time? Someone is coming back to the class and everyone is saying, let's say it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. And one person, instead of saying what time it is, gonna maybe answer a question back. And this person needs to be found. So it's someone who's gonna give a different answer. What's great about this game is that actually students ask and answer questions by themselves. You stand on the side, the language practice is just happening by itself. And children absolutely adore it. So it doesn't matter if you're going to do it at key stage 3, if you're going to do it at key stage 4, actually they really like it. And if you think about the GCSE syllables, it's actually a great practice for practicing role play, where maybe they can be buying items, ordering items, or asking about where something can be found. Another classic is Mexican Wave. The Mexican Wave, it's a great speaking activity where they can, for instance, you can line up all your students and they have to say days of the week. Once it gets to Sunday, next student starts from Monday once again. So it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Very easy way to see if your students understanding what's going on. Is great for months, is great for numbers, is great for telling the time. It also could be, Mexican Wave could be used for saying something different. So let's say maybe naming different fruits, naming different classroom objects, naming different furniture, or naming different places in town. What I usually allowed, how I differentiate this game is allow some students to repeat what had been said, but they cannot repeat what has been said by the last student. So if they're really smart, they should be able to work out that actually every second word could be different. But it's always a good cushioning strategy for those students who really struggle and maybe freeze when they put on the spot, because I say, it's fine, you can recycle what you've heard today, just make sure it's not what the last person had said. Again, students absolutely adore this game, so I would strongly recommend you try it. Fireball, if you have any soft toy, probably using the actual ball is not a good idea, but if you have any soft toy, I throw a teddy bear and all they have to say is something different again from the last person. So it's great for recapping. Okay, let's see how many foods we can name. Let's see how many places in town we can name, different school subjects and so on. Or it can be very similar to Mexican Wave, where if I say it's 1 o'clock, the next student's gonna say it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock, or you can be practicing 10 plus 1, 10 plus 2, 10 plus 3. So children absolutely adore it. Magic Pencil. It's a game where students learn something new, and let's imagine maybe they are learning how to name months in German or in Spanish. So you display all 12 months on the boards, and what they have to do, they have to write, they take a pencil and they have to spell this word on someone's back. So they really write on someone's back. So they're touching someone's back. So let's say if someone is writing May, they'll be writing M-A-Y. This student who is sitting has to feel what word is being spelled on his or her back. They absolutely adore it because it's a very talkative game, but at the same time, when they have to say it, obviously in the target language. So they completely forget that, oh yeah, you're spelling, or let's say you write a number from 1 to 10, but you have to, when you feel someone writing a number on your back, you have to say it in the target language. So again, a really simple practice, very enjoyable, and a great plenary, maybe last 5 minutes of your lesson where students actually interact among each other, and there isn't much input needed from you for them to enjoy. French Whisper, obviously it's originally Chinese Whisper, a great speaking but also listening game where they can pass simple words, but also they can pass a sentence. Very often I give them a prompt and I say that okay, that's maybe I'm gonna order something in French. So I give them a hint. So it's not just anything, because I know it can get very silly and out of control. So very often when you give them a prompt and say, okay, I'm gonna pass a sentence, and this sentence, actually, I'm gonna order something. So they have to be listening what it's gonna be. So whether I'm gonna say, je voudrais du poisson, s'il vous plaît. So they know I'm not gonna be naming places in town. I'm gonna be expressing opinion or describing someone. So French Whisper is really good, and you can also add a variation where once students have said it, they can actually they can try to spell it and write it down. So at the very end, when it gets to the last person, you can also see if everyone's spelling is correct, or maybe even if everyone's translation is correct. So as I say, sky's the limit. It's up to you how much you want to differentiate it, or whether you do it at key stage 1, 2, or key stage 4. Spell it out. This is a game. It's very. You spell a word, and they have to write a word. So let's say if I was, spelling P-A-R-I-S, you should be able to hear Paris. And what students have to do, they write it on the whiteboard, but then obviously you check the spelling, but what you want to achieve is to hear it from them. So can they say it correctly? So let's say if I spell it, let's say Paris, will they say Paris, or will they say Paris? So it's a good spelling game, but also at the same time, it's a good listening and writing practice. So I call it a matrix practice, where you combining 2 or 3 different skills at the same time, because they speak, they spell, and at the same time they listen and they exercise their ear. So Listening Spy, it's a game where you use whiteboards and you ask students to be spies and listen specifically for something you are focusing on during a lesson, whether it's listening for connectives, and they can be maybe just noting connectives, or maybe how many past tense verbs. And notice you can easily differentiate it, because you can say, okay, some of you can be counting how many past tense verbs will appear in this listening, but at the same time, you can actually ask students, probably especially thinking about key stage 4, you can actually ask students to write those verbs on the whiteboards, as many as they can. But again, if it's too difficult, just teaching for recognition is also great, and they absolutely adore it. You can make it competitive for any type of games. The more competitive you make it, I mean, obviously knowing your classes and how much you can allow them to do, but making it competitive very often stimulates them to do better. Ping-pong, it's a game where you say something and they have to say, they have to follow a pattern. So let's say if I'm going to play it with the class, let's say if I say un, they're gonna say deux, trois, quatre, cinq, six. So it's like a ping pong match or tennis match. So let's say if I say lundi, they're gonna say mardi, mercredi, jeudi, and then obviously we can swap. Usually what I do when I play this game, I play it so it's me against the class, but then I say, okay, now try it with your partner. So also give them some personalized space where they can make some mistakes, but also help each other and actually see if they can do it by themselves. Again, they really, really like it. So Hangman, a classic. One thing, my experience of allowing students to play this game is that it's always a good idea to write some words that you want them to focus on. So maybe, your starter activity could be, okay, could we name some places in school? And you make a list of different places in school, in cantine, en cours, in classe d'histoire, in classe de géographie, and so on. And once you have all the spellings, that's when they have to be playing, the game. So they, first of all, they know how to spell it correctly. There isn't much time lost for finding words, and also actually you are focusing on teaching them spelling of specific words you really care about. And especially in primary, that's even better. Let's say if you say, okay, this is Hangman, and it's only about colors. When you display those 10 colors, you are more likely to be successful with actually teaching them how to spell and recognize it. Jumbled words, that's another one which you can easily turn it into a competition where you display something they've learned, but they have to work it out. You can give them 30 seconds, only 30 seconds to work it out, or you can divide your class into smaller groups and they are competing against each other. So, it can be a great starter, it can be a good plenary. Students really like it. And again, it's a very flexible game because it can be used in primary, secondary, and for GCSE. Jumbled sentences, something more advanced, where they can have to work out and reorder the sentence so it makes sense. The great thing about it's really easy to also differentiate it, because you can say, okay, once you've put the sentence in the right order, can you translate it as well? Or can you change one word and make it your own? So there are lots of options how you can really develop this game further. Who wants to be a millionaire? If you're gonna Google a millionaire who wants to be a millionaire, you can find lots of slides which you can be easily adapted, and it's a good game, especially around for any special occasions, like this last lesson before Christmas, or last lesson of the term, or even great for revision, where they are scoring points. Let's see how many points out of 15, or how many points out of 10 you can get. So I'm just gonna show you a simple example I've been using in my lessons. So this is, for instance, a Christmas special, and I call it strictly French dancing. Thinking, sorry, strictly French thinking. Actually, you see, automatically came out of my mouth, because sometimes when we sing songs, I say, okay, we're gonna do some strictly French dancing, so this is a version of my strictly French thinking, and students they record answers on the whiteboards. And I display, as you can see, this is really looks very Christmas. It's a Christmas special. And I have a question, so I display a sentence, je mange du pain avec du fromage. And what they have to do, they just have to write A, B, C, or D, which translation they think is correct. And I give them 5-10 seconds. And after that, here we go, I display the right answer, they're getting a point. So what I encourage students to do, especially if my who wants to be a millionaire is a little bit more advanced, you can ask students to record the answers they didn't know. So let's say if you did something more challenging for Key Stage 3 or Key Stage 4, you can say, okay, guys, if you didn't translate it correctly, if you used the wrong preposition, wrong article, or you didn't recognize what tense it was, you need to write it down. So you just give a few more seconds. Actually, this game becomes also a learning experience. So Beat the Teacher, another classic, but this one is with a little twist. So for instance, let's imagine you are teaching different places in town, and what you do, you say that you're going to be pointing out at different places in town. And when I say, for instance, like now I'm pointing out une piscine, if I say une piscine, you have to repeat une piscine. So the class is saying, I say une piscine, the class is saying une piscine. I say un stade, class is saying un stade. I say une gare, they say une gare. But if I'm going to point out une gare, I'm going to say une piscine, no one can make any sound. If I'm just going to hear that, I'm going to get a point. If they're going to be completely silent, obviously they're going to get a point. Absolutely, they absolutely adore it. Everyone is on board. And I always say, if I don't see everyone repeating, I'm going to get a point. So they're really fully engaged. They really want to win it. And it becomes super competitive. and everyone is repeating words many times, so you can actually teach them some more difficult words or maybe tricky ones. You know, if you try this game, that's guaranteed. If you try this game next week, next lesson you come back, the first question gonna be, are we going to play this game? They absolutely love it. So it's very visual, lots of speaking, lots of listening, lots of repetition, and obviously they want to beat you. So there is no, you know, it's a win-win. So definitely try it. This is my huge highlight of today's session. Okay, spy. Another one to do with spying is where this is, I understand this is more key stage 3, key stage 4 related, but you know, it could be also, you could adapt it for key stage 2. It's, let's imagine you have this is a 90-word piece of writing for GCSE. You have 4 bullet points that should be included. What I do, this is an example of a perfect description, how you can present those 4 bullet points. But if you look close, I always say you need to be a spy. Here, I included some sentences that shouldn't be here. They are not related to the topic, and also they are unrelated to those 4 bullet points. Okay, you have 2 minutes. Can you cross them out? And then obviously you can ask more questions, why they are not related, what do they mean, and so on. So this is an answer, for instance. So as you can see, those 2 sentences have nothing to do with describing your house of your dreams, because it's talking about what you would like to do in the future and what you like to do in your free time. But obviously, it shows the, you know, if they understand the topic and can they understand the bullet points. Now, if it's something, I think those bullet points are quite difficult. So what I would do, I would usually give them 5 minutes and they would be able to work with the partner to begin with. So, you know, let's just work with your partner on explaining the bullet points. I would check their understanding of those bullet points. And once they've done it, then let's read the text together. And now you have 2 or 3 minutes lonely thinking time before you're gonna tell me what sentences you are getting rid of and why. Find the odd one out, a classic. But why is the game? Well, it's a game because you can make it competitive. So again, you can divide your class into smaller teams, or they can be working in pairs. But again, they could be working against their partner, someone sitting next to them, to see, okay, you know, partner number 1 is doing even numbers, partner number 2 is doing odd numbers. Let's see how many points you're gonna score in 1 minute. For odd one out, you could also, instead of using just single words, you could also use sentences. So this is an example where you have 4 sentences and you are actually checking their understanding of more advanced structures. First of all, can they see a pattern? Do they understand the sentences? Kind of also checking understanding of more advanced structures. This is an example of a trivial practice that we use in my school at the beginning of each lesson. And this is for all the subjects, not only for languages, but this is an example of, this is, I think, a trivial practice from my year 10 classes. Again, it can be easily turned into a game because you can make it, again, competitive. But also the first thing I say to my students, if you look at something on this slide and you don't know it, so let's imagine you look at number 5 and you don't have a clue what it means, this is the first thing you need to write down, because obviously you want to learn something new. Because once you know something, it's going to be really, really fast. So I'll give them 5 minutes, and you have 5 minutes. You can use your notes, you can use dictionaries, but in 5 minutes, I want to hear the right answers. And obviously, let's see how many points out of 6 you're going to get. And again, you can be done on a one-to-one basis where they, you know, scoring points out of 6, but also they can be working in smaller teams. So it's up to you. So 6 approaches I usually use is to write something in the target language, is to correct a sentence, fill in the gap, find an odd one out, translate into English, translate into French. But again, you can apply some ideas which are presented on the previous slides. So even for finding the odd one out, you could use sentences or apply different strategies I'm presenting later today, or I mentioned already before. So when it comes to retrieval of existing language, what is very important, it should always include repetition, simplicity, clarity, and some structure, because once they know how it works, it's an easy start of of each lesson for you, but at the same time, you can easily squeeze something that you will be recycling, or something that can stop them from accessing knowledge during a lesson. So it's really good to bombard them something from the last lesson, or something that they need to know in order to progress. So let's say, for instance, if you're going to be teaching the past tense in French, you want them maybe to know how to conjugate verb avoir, and in your retrieval practice, when they fill in the gap or correct sentences, there can be lots of verb avoir in different forms. So actually, this 5-minute practice will make them think, do I know how to say she has, we have, they have? So they already have it written. So let's say 15 minutes into a lesson, if someone's going to say, oh, how are we going to say we have watched? Oh, okay, how do you say we have? Nous avons. Great. Okay. If you don't know it, look back. We did it in the retrieval practice. During the retrieval practice, you should have it in your book. So 3 other examples could be to start a sentence. So for instance, you display un lit, une armoire, un bureau, and you expect them to say whatever it's going to be. Chez moi il y a, ou dans ma maison il y a, dans ma chambre il y a. You can give them finish of the sentence, or change one thing. So for instance, you give them a sentence and you underline something, or you don't underline, they can decide, because anything can be changed, but you just want one element. And again, that can be easily differentiated. Okay, if you are more able, I'm not going to say you are more able, but I would say super champions, if you're able to change more than one thing, change it 2 or 3, or completely override the sentence, just make sure it relates to the same theme. Mini gap fill paragraphs. It's again something which you can use for your trivial practice. You can make you can turn it into a game. You can give them prompts like those ones in blue, but actually you can make it even more challenging without any prompts. So sometimes what I do, I give them like a build up, depending on the class. As a build up, I would show this text without any prompts, without the answers. And I would just say, okay, you have a few gaps. Can you talk to your partner what this is about? So is it about healthy living? Is it about holiday? Is it about relationships? And once they roughly know what it's about, I invite them to work with their partner or without, and try to figure out which words are missing. And after that, I say, you do not talk to anyone and you display the answers. Actually, they can take the final decision by looking which words could be an option. So again, sky's the limit. You can use different variations for different classes, but even just this activity can be applied in many different ways. Classifying things is presenting students with some short texts, maybe some sentences, maybe some words, where they have to divide it into topics. So for instance, you could display 20 words on your slide and say, can you classify it into 3 categories? You can give them categories, or you may actually not tell them and say, okay, can you discuss what different 3 or 2 categories should it be? So I don't know, fruits, veg, sports, or music, or musical instruments, classroom objects, numbers. Again, they really like it. It's a good writing activity. If you have time, I know this is really time-consuming, cutting out things, and so they can actually divide it into groups. I very rarely do it, but they can do it on the whiteboard. They can do it in the books, or they can just draw a table, or you can print out a table where they should have to input some words. Again, classifying things could be looking at different sentences and seeing what sentences are positive or negative. Also, it may be including positive or negative opinions. Could be also looking at which sentences are healthy or unhealthy. So let's say there are some statements, and I don't know, one sentence is saying, I love donuts because they are tasty. So is that a healthy or unhealthy choice? So bon, mauvais pour la santé. And all they have to say is just highlighted, color-coded what sentences are healthy, unhealthy, or which sentence is a good or bad idea. So for instance, you can have a sentence, I'm going to smoke every day. Is that a good or bad sentence, good or bad idea? Or you can have a sentence, I'm going to be jogging every day, and they just have to react, okay, positive or negative. So again, can be done by themselves, can be done in groups, can be done as a class. Question answer challenge that can be done in beat your partner or beat the team. So how is it done? It's a great revision opportunity where all you do, you invite students to open the books. It can be revising a topic, can be revising something from the last lesson, and all you do, you ask questions in the target language or in English. So if I ask you in English, for instance, okay, how do you say 47 in French? So partner should be able to say 47, and then, or I can ask, okay, what is 36? And someone should be able to say 36. Of course, they have to ask questions they are able to answer, so something that has been covered. So no one should be asking, okay, how do you say windowsill in French if you haven't covered that? So I always say it has to be something from your notes, but you want to beat your partner and you want to ask some questions and see how many points out of 5 each one you're going to get. So it's, again, they can be working by themselves. It's quite self-reflective, and at the same time they can be working in smaller teams where they are trying to beat maybe a different table, or they can also play against you. So lots of variations for this one. It's quite engaging and they like it. Guess my number. I like this game because it makes students really think, but also speak in the target language. So what it is, I take a whiteboard and I write, let's say, imagine that I'm teaching about different celebrations, and I'm going to write the name of a celebration in French. I'm going to write it on the whiteboard. So I'm saying, okay, I'm writing the name of the celebration. Okay, now you have to guess. Obviously, I taught already a number of celebrations, and all they have to do now is leave the hand up and say, okay, is it les Pâques? I say, no, c'est pas les Pâques. Le Noël? Non, c'est pas le Noël. Les 14 juillet? Oui, c'est le 14 juillet. So as you can see, the great thing about this game is they have to say it in French. So they forget they speak in target language, and I understand, especially the older they are, the more self-conscious they become about maybe mispronouncing things. But actually, when they play this game, they kind of forget about, because they want to guess what you wrote on the board. So it's great for, you can write numbers, you can write days of the week, you can write even sentences, because you can say, okay, I'm expressing opinion about a school subject. And you have to guess what subject it is. So, and then you can even ask, okay, is that a positive or negative opinion? So you can really, really extend it. And they are obviously telling you more words or telling you more sentences. I call it guess my number, but it can be any number of words or options you're going to apply. Auction. Auction is about students bidding for something. So let me explain it. I usually use it for teaching numbers. So if I teach, let's say, my students to go up to 60, so this is more of a maybe key stage 2 example, but as we know, numbers, especially in French, are quite difficult. You can also do it key stage 3. So what happens is, initially we're bidding by €1. So if I say 1, the next person must say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And up to 60. Obviously, if you get to the tricky numbers, as we know it, from 11 to 16, and someone's gonna say 12, and after 12, someone's gonna say 3, okay, 12 will be the highest bidder and will get the prize. The prize, what is the prize? Usually it's a sticker. I give sticker, I give merits, it can be even well-done cards. So it's up to you. I don't know what kind of system you're using in your school, in your classroom, but they love stamps, they love stickers, even at Key Stage 4. Don't ask me why. Actually, if you say you're gonna get a sticker, they just want to get it. So we are bidding for different things, and bidding can be it can be done not only with numbers, could be also actually for the highest bidder could be for someone who's gonna so let's say it could be naming animals, and the highest bid will be the one who's gonna say a different animal. Because obviously maybe most students will know 5 or 6 or 10 different animals, and maybe the last person will be the highest bidder. So you just turn it into an auction, you make it very formal, so you turn it into a little bit of a show. They just love it. It's just a little variation, a little addition to your lesson. I can see there are lots of comments in the chat option. I'm just gonna go through all the ideas, and I'm gonna look at the chat option as I'm clicking on the slides. I'm really sorry, I'm not ignoring anyone. I'm just not looking at the chat option at this moment, but I will look once I get to the last slide. Bingo made simple. It's I know, again, very often we do not have time to be printing out things. And what I do to make my bingo games a little bit more frequent and easy for myself, I ask my students actually to write, let's say, 6 words or 6 sentences, whatever, or 6 numbers on the whiteboard or in their books. So let's say if we're going to play bingo about classroom objects. So I would say, okay, we learned those classroom objects. I will going to display some visuals. Can you write it in English? So let's say they're going to write scissors, glue stick, a ruler, pencil. And once I call it in French, they just cross it out. So all I'm saying is you make them reflect which words they should know in French because they write it in English, but then, you don't need to be photocopying. You don't need to be thinking about having different grades, because if you ask your students to write it down, everyone's combination will be slightly different, but it's going to be in a way contained because I'm going to give them the range of words that they should consider. So it's just a really short 1-minute game that you can, a quick bingo, which you can play without thinking, oh, I need to photocopy it, or I need to find a grade for, or I don't have a bingo, which is, for school subjects, I don't have a bingo for animals. Actually, they can do it for you. Call out and disappear. This is a game where you teach something, let's say you teach days of the week, and all they do, they repeat after you, and you write days of the week or numbers, let's say, on the whiteboard. So let's say, I'm going to give you 10 numbers. Can you write it on your whiteboards? And students, let's say, I say 47, they write 47. Says, they write 16. So they check the numbers. So we have 10 numbers on the board. What I would do, now I know some numbers can be tricky. So I would repeat those numbers very quickly. So let's say if it was, let's say 14, 15, 16, I would say, okay, repeat after me. 14, let's say 14. 15, 15, 16, then 14, 15, 16, 14, 15, 16, 16, 15, 14, and so on. They repeat it many times, so now I really ensure that they know how to pronounce it. And now I'm saying, okay, we have 10 numbers written, you have 10 numbers written on your whiteboard, I have 10 numbers written on my board. All I want to do, I want you to make it disappear. So what you're going to do, you're going to call out any number we have on the boards in it, and as you call it out, I make it disappear. So let's say it says, okay, says, can you make it disappear from your whiteboards first? So I give my students 5 seconds. Once I see reaction, they are rubbing it out. I rub out 16 from my whiteboard. Okay, next number. Someone's got 14. Okay, 14. Can you get rid of 14 on your whiteboard? Okay, great. 14. So they are checking if they are understanding it better this time. So all it is listening first, where they write the numbers. Then they have to ensure they corrected the answers, lots of repetition from your part, and at the very end, they call it out, so you make it disappear. So kind of reverse it. So what you said, they tell you at the very end, so everyone's whiteboards are clear at the very end. Mr. Grumpy Size, it's a game where students have to contradict you or say exactly the opposite. So let's say if I'm gonna say I like coffee, they have to say I don't like coffee. If I'm going to say I'm happy, they're going to say I'm not happy. So it can be a turning positive sentence into a negative sentence, or just saying something opposite. Again, they just like it. It can be played as a fireball variation. It can be played as a Mexican way variation. So every second person is Mr. Grumpy, and every other person is saying something positive. So again, lots of variations for that. Mind Reader, a good invitation for students to speak, but also to listen to each other and to write things. So let's say you display this table and they play with partners. They can play it with you to begin with. So I would say, okay, so I'm telling my class, I'm thinking of a sentence. And now you have to guess what sentence it is. Okay. Okay, so now you have to move from the blue section. Once you guessed my word from the blue section, you can move to the black section and then to the red section. So the class is saying, or one partner is saying il, I say no. Elle, no. Je, no. Jacques, oui. So now when they guess Jacques, they can move to the black section. So Jacques mange, no. Jacques prend, oui. So now they can say Jacques prend une poire, oui. So they can move to the violet section. Jacques prend une poire et boit de l'eau. Non. Jacques prend une poire et boit de la limonade. Non. Jacques prend une poire et boit du vin. Oui. Okay, so now they have a sentence. They can write Jacques prend une poire et boit du vin. So once they get the sentence, they have to write it down in the books. Once they wrote it in the books, they have to translate it, and they swap. So the good thing is you can do it as a class, and then they play with the partners. What I like about is that you stand on the side and you can hear lots of friends speaking in your class for the next 3-4 minutes, because it's very contained. And again, before they play this game, I give lots of input. So actually everyone knows how to pronounce it. So I would read those words. Okay, so une poire, une pêche, une pomme. So they read it a few times. And once they've done it, they play it with me. So by the time they play by themselves, they're not very self-conscious, okay, if they're gonna mispronounce it, because they just give it a go. They know how to say it. Write a quiz. It's a good recapping activity or revision strategy. Sometimes I use and this is an example, that the one you can see on your screens is an example from a primary school. It's a good way of checking students' understanding, and also it's a good invitation for your students to access their notes. And I ask them to write ideas on a sticky notes. So as you can see, I selected the top 10 questions, obviously also questions without mistakes. Also, you can see which students maybe have, can challenge some misconceptions. So you can see which students maybe do think that something means something different, or maybe the notes actually contain mistakes. So it's kind of a win-win, where you quickly checking, their understanding, also checking the notes, and then they complete the quiz. And they like when they create something and they are actually testing each other. So, and then I say, okay, you wrote your quiz, you have 10 questions. Let's see how many out of 10 you're gonna get when those questions do not come from me, but will come from you. Creating a crossword, that can be a little bit tricky, but for more able students, it's a great opportunity to have a thing, and also actually to learn how you can create a crossword. Researching false friends, a good idea for, especially maybe focusing on some misconceptions, and a good invitation to use dictionaries or reflect, for instance. So a classic, especially if you teach French, when you have to describe ta journée scolaire, and obviously the most students are telling you how they are getting to school, or let's say what does it mean par hasard. So it's good sometimes to tell them, okay, those are false friends. You have 5 minutes to find in a dictionary and tell me what they mean or why they are called false friends. And talking about dictionaries, you can very easily, use dictionary as a game. You can say, okay, you have all 5 or 10 minutes to find 5 masculine words, 5 feminine words. Or can you find 5 words that start with this letter? Or can you find 1 word for each letter of the alphabet? It's just an invitation to teach them how to use dictionaries, how much is there, or can you find 5 places in town in a dictionary? So again, can be made very competitive. Okay, team A is competing against team B. Okay, let's see how many words you can find in a dictionary in 5 minutes, and the focus is this, and they have to find it. Or you display some words and they have to find their gender. So, okay, I don't know, you write, I don't know, boulangerie, piscine, stade, and so on, and they have to tell you if it's masculine or feminine. It's a great way of showing them how they can use it and why dictionaries actually are useful and how much is in there. Pass the sentence is very similar to a French whisper, but also you can make a table where you list students' ideas, who, with whom, does what, where, and why. And the sentence doesn't have to make sense. So everyone is writing something on a sticky notes and then passing a sentence, and you can finish off with a sentence like that, which doesn't make too much sense. Mon frère et moi jouons aux échecs à la piscine car c'est délicieux. But they love this kind of silliness, where actually, you listed lots of different ideas, listed different words, and now you are combining those sticky notes. And also from sentence making, you can use like ready to go grids, very easy to Google it, where they have already some words and they just have to make some sentences. Or you can tell them a sentence. You say it in English, they write it in French, they just have to find it in this box. Skip it is where you give them numbers, days, a month, and they have to skip some numbers. So let's say we are going up to 30, but we are saying it in 3 times table, or we are doing it in 4 times table, or we are saying every second day of the week, or every third month, or you say the one before. So if I say 4, you say 3. If I say mercredi, you say mardi. If I say December, you say November, or 2 months before. So if I say May, you say March. That can be really, really, brainstorming and quite challenging, but it's a good game. And really makes them think hard, and you can turn it into a game. So coming back to the auction I mentioned before, if you want to make your auction more challenging, you can be bidding by every second, third, or fourth number. Again, there's another variation you can add to it. Or changing the color, the last person wins. So let's say if you say good for recapping colors, any adjective. So if I say un poisson rouge, so the next person is going to say un poisson vert. Let's see how many colors do we know, and the last person is going to be the winner. So the last thing I would like to mention is that there are lots of things online. And I know I mentioned lots of games during my presentation today. And I would just like to say that on those websites, you can find lots of games which are ready to go, which are interactive. So if you want to play a more interactive game, engage your students, I strongly recommend to have a look at those websites. They are free. I know there's Linguascope or Language Engines. There are lots of very exciting websites, but you have to have a subscription. Those ones are free. So please have a go, explore different ideas. And also there is this article, and actually I took some inspiration from my presentation today about 10 nifty starters for language lessons on Futures French Teachers Net. If you want to read it in full, this is the link, which actually I can, let's see if I can paste it in the chat option. So if anyone wants to have a look, feel free. So I'm just going to quickly go to the chat option, and that takes me to the end of my presentation. So this is the link for the article I mentioned, and I'm just going to quickly paste in those 3 websites I mentioned. And I would like to say thank you very much for being with me and listening to my ideas. Just quickly pasting. Here we go. Those are the 3 websites. So thank you very much for all your thank yous. And dziękuję. Merci. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great afternoon. Thank you for being with me this afternoon. I hope it was useful. Thank you. So thank you, Maria. Thanks, everyone. Just looking at your comments right now. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Marcela. Gracias. Charlotte, the link is in the chat option. So if you scroll it up, I think all those comments are going very fast, but I put those links there. If you go, I put it at 2:18. So if you scroll it up, you're going to be able to see the links, which I just put in the chat option. Thank you, Maria. And thank you, Pilar. Sorry if I didn't have time to mention everyone's names, but I really appreciate your thank yous. Okay. Oh, it's not showing. Okay. It's quite interesting. If it's not showing, it's on the slides, which you can, obviously, I know you can review this session in the next 3 months. So if you can see my slides, I would just recommend you just see the last 5 minutes of my presentation so you can see those links. So sorry if you cannot access it. You can access the slides, Heidi. This is all those sessions are recorded on the language show website. So you should be able to see it after the show. Okay, thanks everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thank you.